Monday, May 10th, 2021. We discuss a movie from 1953. It's a Western. Stars Alan Ladd. Can you guess it? Oh, wait, there's a picture right beside me. No, the other way, Joe. It's Shane. Come back, Shane. Come back. Today on the Daily Review with me, Joe LaRocca. Shane, a laconic but skilled gunfighter with a mysterious past, is a drifter who rides into an isolated valley in the sparsely settled Wyoming territory sometime after the Civil War. He is hired by a farmhand by local rancher Joe Starrett, Starrett, but still, good literary name, you know, Starrett. Gee, I wonder what that's a reference to. Who lives as a homesteader with his wife and their young son Joey. Starrett tells Shane that a war is imminent. Wait, sorry. Starrett tells Shane that a war of intimidation is being waged on the valley's settlers. Though they have claimed their land legally under the Homestead Act, a restless cattle baron, Rufus Riker, has hired various rogues and henchmen to harass him and force them out of the valley. Okay, so I'm sorry, I don't usually read the Wikipedia thing, but I did today because kind of distracted because I watched this movie last night, but then this morning I watched another movie called The Disciple that's on Netflix right now. It's new on Netflix. It came out last year though. It's an Indian movie, and I am like still buzzing from having watched it. It's like one of the best movies I've seen in a while. Another common phrase I use, but it's really good. It really spoke to me, and I loved it. So I guess I'll do that tomorrow, but I guess I'll give you guys a chance to have some people who are, regular watchers watch it if they want. Yeah, it's on Netflix, might be on other things. It is called The Disciple, and it is an Indian movie. So, because I think that there's probably several movies called The Disciple out there. Anyway, back to Shane. So I knew I wouldn't be able to sum it up well because I just got The Disciple on my brain. But Shane is a movie I actually hadn't seen. And it was one, I'd read a bunch about it. I've taught that genre film class where we deal with Western, and it's it's probably the biggest Western I hadn't seen. It's one of those ones where someone would be like, well, what about Shane? And I'd be like, you know what? I'm like, it's really important. Why don't you guys watch it and let me know? I don't lie to him. I have not seen that one. But it is directed by George Stevens, he's one of the Fighting Five. He was in World War II and with a bunch of other guys. And there's that documentary about them. And they came back and just dominated Hollywood because they learned all these amazing filming skills while making documentaries on the front and stuff, and they brought that kind of mentality to the movies, and the movies usually ended up being more realistic and darker, a darker undercurrent because they had seen the face of war. Anyway, this movie stars Alan Ladd. Jean Arthur, who plays his wife, plays adult Joe Starrett. So there's Joe Starrett and his son, little Joey Starrett, and then his wife. I think his name is Marion. And she looks like the first person to have ever used Botox. That's what I'm not. I sounds like I'm. And then when I was looking on Wikipedia, she is 50 years old. I'm like, oh, maybe she really did do some sort of 1950s Gloria Swanson in the. I'm ready for my close up. Just with getting electrocuted and putting weird bandages on your face and having peels. I don't know. Something looks wrong. It looks like she was stung by a bee or something. She looks like she had an allergic reaction. Anyway, and her husband, Joe Starrett, played by Van Heflin, who looks so good. He's not good looking, but he's movie good looking, He's for that time period, he fits right in there. Little Joey's played by Brandon DeWild, and he's actually a really good little kid actor. I think the way they film him makes him so iconic, but he feels like the classic Norman Rockwell, like little boy from like he's every boy America, with his like little Red Ryder BB gun running around. And then Jack Palance in his first major film role plays this scary dude who comes after him in the like last half of the movie, who's like a hitman from the outside, and he is amazing. He's so intimidating. So the first thing you'll notice when you watch this movie, and it is on Amazon Prime, is the cinematography by, I think his name Loyal Griggs, which is the best name ever, is the cinematographer, and you're just instantly like, holy vistas, the color, my eyes. But then there's a weird thing. I was like, oh, I'm watching some weird version because it didn't fill up the 16:9 screen, which is weird because I was like, oh, it's widescreen, but it's not really. It's like, oh, it's just a little bit less. So it's like that old school widescreen. But I'm like, that's weird because it's Technicolor and it's got the vistas. Why didn't they shoot it in anamorphic? And then I found out that I realized this 1953 is pre-anamorphic. So they actually shot it 4:3, 1:3:3. They shot it full frame. And then because of all the tradition that was happening at the time of widescreen, they cropped it in and blew it up to 16:9, or they cropped it to 16:9. Maybe they didn't have to blow it up, but it does affect the sharpness of some of the wide shots. You can kind of notice it there, and it's weird. The pillar bars are a little bit weird. Maybe that's because it's not the true 1.85. Maybe it's the 1.78, which I don't get why that happened. I guess we don't need to talk about it. Anyway, it did have stereo, or got re-recorded in stereo to have a stereo strip on the thing. So it's basically one of those movies that got caught right in between the big changes that started happening in the 50s with big Technicolor and CinemaScope and stuff like that, which happens a little bit later. I think that's right around now though. But so this movie was made in 51, and then it was like in editing for a really long time, and then kind of like held back for, I don't know, there's a whole history of this movie. It was going to be a B movie, and then someone saw it and was like, oh, and then, it's one of those movies that they never thought would work out, and then it became like one of the most iconic movies in the genre, and maybe the most perfect example of like the American Western hero and all of his virtues, which we later find out is bullshit when we watch Unforgiven by Clint Eastwood. But at this time period in America, we felt like heroes like that, coming out of World War II, man. We had some faith and everything. The highest polling for a president, I saw this on Reddit, like that's ever since they've done polling in favor of a president, was like in 46, Truman, because he ended the war, and he had like 92% support rate, and like now Biden has like 53, and it's like that's like crazy high or something for nowadays, ever since like the 60s, where we lost trust in the government. I don't think it's ever been, even Reagan, who was really got pretty high up there was still always going to be like 30 to 40% of the population that's just like, I don't believe any of that shit anymore. And that's where we get Unforgiven. Anyway, essentially the story is just like like I told you, there's a homesteader, this family like kind of on the range, and it's that theme that's talked about a great deal. It's like one of the major themes in westerns of the open range versus the fenced-in plot. Like, oh, fences killed the West because now you can't drive your cattle straight across and find the places to eat. You gotta, but that was actually not great for the cattle because they would get too much exercise. It seems like they would like. That's what I kind of figured out. I'm like, oh, they're working too much and not eating enough, so because that's why they're all horns and bones. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense if you just keep a cow like in a pen and just feed it and don't give it much exercise. It's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, which is better for the beef, which means it's better for like basically one person or one family. Whereas if you are able to establish everybody with their own individual farms where there is everybody kind of has their own thing, but then there's also a town where you can contribute, and there'd be like, It's more of a community thing, and everybody helps, and that's more progress. The other way kind of is like almost a feudal system, like feudal England, kind of feudal, like lords and serfs and things working under them. So it's interesting that Shane is like jumpy. You know, he's got like PTSD. He was a gunfighter, and it's so good. The costumes are so good. Edith Head. He's got like classic like gunslinger outfit, and then he slowly or he morphs into like, you know, farmhand. And there's this great scene where they dig up a stump, and it's this great metaphor. And it's like the power of working together, and it's fun. They're like knocking out this old stump, which is a great metaphor. It's like this 200-year-old tree, and they're just getting it out of the way. It's because it's like, this is visual metaphors. All of this is beautiful. Cinematography and the vistas, the backgrounds, like, holy crap. I had to keep looking up. I'm like, oh, that must be a painted background. And I think sometimes, there's a few times where I think there is some stuff shot on sets, and like out the window, obviously that's like a matte painting and stuff. But there were shots where I had to look up. I'm like, did they go to like, this is insane. Like, this view is like, and it is real. It looks like something from Lord of the Rings or something. It's great. That got me. Yeah, that's when I was like, this is the best. I was so pumped. by that. Anyway, I didn't realize that people were talking. I'll address the chat at the end. I'm sorry. Because I just want to say a few more things about it. There's a boxing scene in a saloon that is reminiscent of The Quiet Man. I believe that's 56 maybe? I don't know. Maybe it's earlier than that, actually. 52? I don't know. I'll have to look that up. Quiet Man, great movie. There's just like where they're just boxing, and it's not really realistic because like they're like smiling. They're like, we're winning, yay! I'm like, you just got a fucking chair broke over your head. You're dead, dude. You are in a coma, man. That guy hit you as hard as he could directly in the face. You're dead. But it's great, you know. Because it's almost always through the little Joey's eyes, and he's seeing it like it's a boy's life magazine, you know. Like everything through him is through like a little paperback novel, you know. And there's a great scene where, you know, Shane doesn't want to start any shit, you know, but they're starting shit with him. Like I said, all these this cattle baron, which they never call him that in the movie, but it's really good. He's Riker. Yeah. They keep like pestering him, and you know, Joe doesn't start any shit, and I mean Shane, and then, you know, little Joey's like, why did Shane back down? Is he a pussy? He doesn't say it. Boy, that's not what a hero does. Jeez, I wish, you know. And then the next time Joey's there, he's like, all right. You know, it's a little cool hand Luke there. Like, all right, I got to save my pride. It's got a lot to do with the flaw in male pride. Like, you must maintain my pride, but at what cost? Then, yeah, so roughly around the midpoint, maybe a little bit after the midpoint, we'll say the 5/8 point, Jack Palance shows up, and you're like, uh-oh, things have gotten real. And it's like really smart that it's like, it's not like the law is completely non-existent, although there is no like sheriffs or anything in this movie. It is fairly lawless, but like Riker isn't just going to outright kill these people to get them, you know, quote unquote, off his land, even though they've earned it. And the Homestead Act is basically, if you go there and you work the land and you're there for a certain amount of time and you've like made progress, you can keep it. And these people, the cattle ranchers, just had free reign. But and you know, there's a really great part where you get it's a really good script where you get Riker's point of view, where he's like, I've been here. I was born here, man. Years and years ago. Like, I'm not an immigrant. It's like that. It's that Bill the Butcher thing, you know, where it's like, my parents and my family helped clear this land of natives. Ew, natives. And like make it hospitable and get the whole cattle drive thing going and set this whole thing up and tame the nation, as they say, tame the country. And they feel that then now the homesteaders are coming in after they've done all the hard work and benefiting from it. And I guess there's some degree of, like, you can see their point of view, but you also see how that's so like antithetical to progress. And it's cool how they, obviously fights back against that. And it's like, listen, there were people here before you even. There were trappers and there were natives. Like, you can't say, he's like, yeah, but look what we made it. We cleared it. We cleared it of its savagery, And he's like, dude, this is fine. Now what? It's not all yours, This is and all these American ideals. And it's all right there. It's like the national anthem in movie form in terms of like Purple Mountain's majesty. So George Stevens, like the director, his attention to authenticity, of course not in the boxing and fighting and stuff, but in the gunplay, very much so. It's not one of these westerns where they're like, pew, 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 pew. There's only a gunshot a handful of times, and it has a huge impact when it's shot. The first time it's shot, they ramp the volume up, and it startled me. They do it intentionally. They like punch it so that you're like, oh, that's right, guns are real, like a real fucking force, They're not to be trifled with. Whether, and I'm reading some stuff, it was like, well, George Stevens, also, there's no blood in it, obviously, it's 90, but when people get shot, they like get pulled to the ground, like, because George Stevens has seen people get shot. He was in World War II. He knows the force of a bullet, the damage it can do. And I like that. That's we're starting to step closer and closer towards a modern representation of guns and heroism, even in movies to a certain degree. It's not as dark as The Searchers. The Searchers really kicks this, is like kind of similar to this, but it's a twist in terms of it, similar to this and like scope and stuff, but there's a little dark turn in that, making The Searchers a superior film, in my opinion. There's a great, anyway, Palance kills a guy. That part's awesome. And when that's the guy who gets shot, he pulls him to the ground. It's like, holy shit. So anyway, there's also great animal actors in this. I mean, I'm sure they were being tased or something horrible, but there's like a huge buck, like a deer that's on a set clearly, but that's like a trained deer, but he's walking around. There's a dog that's like doing all this great stuff. And then there's this other dog that's on a porch that like literally like, when Shane comes in, he's like, Durr! It's like, holy crap. They trained that dog? And then they did. You find out they did. Oh, and there's one thing that, I don't know, McCavity, you old enough to remember this from the 1800s? Did you used to put turpentine? That was a joke. I'm sorry, McCavity. Did you put turpentine on wounds? She's like, let me put some turpentine on that. I was like, Jesus. Fucking, let's not kill Shane too early. The movie essentially builds up to a climactic showdown between Shane and Jack Palance's character, whose name I cannot remember, although he's basically the best villain I've seen in years. Why can't I remember his name? I think it's just Jack. It is Jack. It's Jack something. And it's really great because in the climax, Shane changes back into his gunfighter outfit, and you're like, and we see the gunfight from Joey's perspective, like under a table, so it's all low angles, and it does the hero shot, but it makes sense why they're doing the hero shot. It's really good. I obviously won't tell you what happens, but there's a lot of like heroism in the decision for Shane to go and make himself, make him be the fighter over the older Joey. It'd be a nice day when there are no more guns in the valley. I would agree with that. Assuming the whole thing's a metaphor for America. Let's get the guns out of the valley, guys. I mean, I'm not trying to take your guns away. I am trying to take your assault rifles away. Somehow, from everybody universally. I think that would be pretty cool. Because, come on, guys. I know there's like 10%. Not a 10%, 1/10 of a half of a percent that needs those assault rifles to fight wild boars, like I've learned. But come on. Anyway, we don't need to talk about that. I do recommend Shane. A little bit boring in the middle part, a little bit of a drag. Let me see what you guys are chatting about. I would recommend it. Hey, you noticed the dogs? Jen, there is. You'll love the dogs in there. They're super scrappy looking, and they're like there's one that's just like, I think I was reading, I started reading the IMDb trivia, but I didn't like, at one of the boring parts. Sorry, I am a millennial in some senses. I was like, all right, this is a little boring, let me look up some facts. And I noticed, I started reading something in the funeral scene, and I went, oh, and I just stopped looking at it, because I was like, because no one had died yet, and I was like, I don't want to know whose funeral scene that. So there's something about the funeral scene with dogs, with that dog was just kind of like, it just did it. It just did the mournful thing with when a guy's like laying over a horse, and that wasn't like planned. The dog was just like, oh my God, my buddy's dead. And because they thought it was really dead. It's pretty cool. Yeah, there's weird 50s Botox, I think, maybe. Oh, Brendan DeWild died tragically young. He did? How did that happen? Let us know how that happened. I'm interested in that. Giant. Yes, Giant is a George Stevens movie that I also haven't seen. I know it's Liz Taylor. It's crazy that I haven't seen that movie. That's coming up. And I own it, too. I got it at the thrift store for like 50 cents once, and it was in this cool like faux leather thing. And I was like, oh, Giant. I'm pretty sure that this is going to fall in perfectly with Shane and Cool Hand Luke, with Christ metaphor heroes that walk off into the sunset forever. Yeah, I mean, it's up to you to interpret whether Shane lives or dies. We'll get to the Brendan DeWild thing in a second. I will have to watch that. A Place in the Sun I have seen, but not in a really long time. That's another. Who's that? Is that Fred Zimmerman or Zinneman, or is that George Stevens as well? The dogs have learned helplessness. I have learned helplessness as well. The movie The Negotiator put this movie on my radar. Oh, that's the movie. Kevin, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I'd heard about this movie, and I thought it was from a Quentin Tarantino movie, and then I realized, no, that can't be. Then I thought it was from that show, Dinner for Five, where these actors would sit around with, what's his name there? Swingers? What's his name there? Jon Favreau, and they would talk about all sorts of stuff. And I thought somebody said, oh, the thing about, and now I'm realizing, yeah, it's from The Negotiator, where they discuss, the thing where whether you get to decide whether or not Shane lives or dies at the end based on those final shots. Although he is on a horse going through a graveyard. I kind of think he's dead, but that doesn't ruin the movie for you. You know how these movies go. Anyway, if you've got a character that's like a Christ figure in a movie, probably not going to make it, right? The whole point is of the hero is the sacrificial hero in these stories. Anyway, turpentine is for drinking in the UK among some people. For reals? Wait, are you kidding me? Or like, to get fuffed up? Anyway, so he was, all right. So Brendan DeWild was in a driving accident. That's a bummer. He I mean, who knows whether he would have been a great adult actor? I mean, I'm assuming he died as an adult because he was driving. Okay, yeah. Okay. No, The Searcher. It's The Searchers. The Search. He might have directed The Search. The Searchers is I'm gonna kill myself if I don't say it in 2 seconds. John Ford. God, wow. Whew, that was close. John Ford. I was kind of that's like one of the big ones, Learned helplessness. Yeah. No, but that is so funny, Kevin, that you mentioned that. It was one of the main. When I was watching it, I was like, why do I kind of know the end of Shane? I'm like, is it just in the collective unconscious or whatever? Collective conscious? Collective unconscious? Yeah. Anyway, so the movie that I want to do tomorrow, The Disciple, it's on Netflix. It's not for everybody. Oh, there's one huge thing. Oh, The Search with Montgomery Clift. I have not seen that. Off topic, Liz Taylor and Richard Burton in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf talk about an acting endurance test and an emotional exhaustion after that film. Yes, that is one of the other most exhausting movies ever, because it's just two drunk people yelling at each other. Is one of the first clips I was ever shown in a film class, when he brings the gun out and he pulls the trigger and the umbrella comes out, and I was just like, wow, cinema. Wow, because that movie's like what, 66 or something, and I was like, that is, if that could be, that's like something that would be in Train Spotting, that like something was super fresh at the time. Um, let's see here. No, I don't know anything about The Search. I'll look that up. There's a time, I don't know tons about the 50s, I mean, I know the genre stuff, but I don't know many, like nearly enough of the dramas, I just know a lot of like the westerns because that's the stuff that I've both studied and have taught, but some of the kind of more general dramas I've missed out on, yeah, that time period, yeah, it's hit or miss, you got to kind of be in the mood for it, but, there's one major thing about Shane that I haven't talked about, which is like the most subversive and greatest part of it, probably, is there's like this incredibly subtle love triangle between Shane, Marion, and Joe, where Marion just loves Shane immediately because he's like Brad Pitt or whatever, and the husband's kind of like Johnny Forehead, like me, And so it's like, oh, and she likes that he's more of a man, he's got more manly attributes with his ability to protect and stand up. But the thing is that Joe is truly a hero too. I mean, he's ends up being the organizer of everything. Shane's like a catalyst who comes in. He's like Jesus, he comes in and he's like shows you the way, but you got to do it yourself. But that triangle is amazing, and it's only talked about for like a second in the climax, where you realize, oh, Shane, if he wanted to be a jerk, he could let Joe start, face Jack, probably get gunned down, and then, Shane could just swoop in and, become the new man, in the house. But that's not the point. Anyway, that triangle is great. It's subversive and it's so underneath the surface. Yeah, so interesting. Man, I got to go to Wyoming. That was what I was thinking when I was watching this. Maybe I'll just drive there this summer and look around. Yeah, the authenticity of props, clothing, livestock, all that stuff was good. He shipped in cattle that would be like more ragged looking and stuff like that, which was like, wow, that's bold. This is a real filmmaker, man. And the log cabin that the Starts live in look exactly like Lincoln logs. Like, remember Lincoln logs? It's like that exact thing. It's pretty amazing. So, yeah, another movie about the American dream. And now you guys are just saying movies. Montgomery Clift could have been a contender for what? And High Noon, yeah, High Noon's got some boring stuff in it, but it's like so classical, and it's like such a clear metaphor, about isolationism or something. I can't remember, but I just remember the end. You just compare High Noon as an action movie to like even another amazing action movie, but in terms of showing how much it changed, compare that to like Die Hard or something, where there's all these like action sequences throughout Die Hard that are like get more and more unbelievable, even though they feel real in the movie. In High Noon, he just like, it's him being like, guys, I need help. This guy's getting off a train at noon, and he's gonna fuck up the town. Everybody could get together, and everybody's like, I don't know. And he just walks around and he's like, the end. High Noon. You're like, holy shit, you did it. Yes, Good, Bad, and the Ugly is amazing. And Gotham was just watching Fistful of Dollars for the first time after having watched. He'd seen Yojimbo before, but he watched Yojimbo again and then watched Fistful of Dollars. And so now I think he maybe has seen Good, Bad, and the Ugly, but I guess he's gonna probably watch a few dollars more if he liked it. So maybe we'll do Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I haven't done that yet, and Kevin gave me that cool ass copy. So, all right, let's do a little bit of music. We've talked a little bit too long. Hey, if you're not subbed, you should go ahead and sub if you'd like to sub. More than 60% of the people watching are not subbed, said the analytics that I looked at yesterday. Oh yeah, and the Beguiled. Oh yeah, we got to do both Beguileds because Gotham taught both of those. So maybe we'll do a Beguiled double feature. I've never seen the original Beguiled. Or no, that's not true. No, it is true. I have not seen the original Beguiled. Okay, we'll get to all this stuff, and eventually we'll do Audition, and I'll fucking throw up on my desk. Die Hard on Horses 2020. What is there going to be another Die Hard movie? I wouldn't be surprised. Edward. Yeah. Yeah, Good, the Bad, the Ugly. You just like watch the opening sequence of Good, the Bad, the Ugly, and you go, oh, that's where Tarantino got everything. Not that I mean I like Tarantino, but you know what I mean. Oh, what song is this? Oh, let's do a different one today. Oh, sorry guys. Was that brutal? Who's Bonnie Bedelia? I can't think of who that is. Oh, sorry if I hurt your ears with my music. All right. Shane. Come back, Shane. We need you, Shane. We need you, Shane. We need you, Shane. We need you, Shane. Come back, Shane. We need you, Shane. Talk to you tomorrow.